Let's talk a little bit about Vogue. The close-up portraits is what I mean. I like to call them Vogue. But today we're talking about creating really stellar and stunning close-up classic senior portraits. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey if you're new here, and I am a senior photographer based in Richmond, Virginia. And this channel is just my fun little space where I like to share some helpful tips and tricks for your senior photography business, as well as a fun few life things thrown in here and there. But today we are talking about close-up portraits. And I'm going to touch on this, I think, in next week actually. But as much as I love, sharing about the fun movement poses, a lot of those are more full body or the camera's, brought back a little bit. But today I want to talk a little bit more about creating just like really amazing classic portraits, which it's still so important to create those as well as the fun ones. So let's dive in. Actually, before we dive in, let me just remind you, and if you're new here, you probably haven't heard, but I have a free posing guide called Posing for Gen Z, and I will have it linked right down in the description box. But it is my free guide that has my go-to prompts for really cute, trendy, just fun poses that my seniors absolutely love. And they're less just like classic, stale, standard poses, and they're more of the like fun, movement, candid type of style poses. So if you're interested in that, that is linked right down below, and it's totally free for you. So you might be thinking like, duh, like of course we need to take close-up portraits during the session, which I hope you are. I hope that's what you're thinking in your head, but I just want to give you a few quick tips that I think will absolutely change the game for your close-up portraits. There's 3 different things that I want to talk to you about that I truly believe will just change the game for your close-up portraits, and really just create those stunning, beautiful images that the moms are going to want to hang on their wall. So tip number 1 is to consider your crop. And what I mean by this is to really take the time to set up the crop correctly in your camera and not just later in like editing. So what I mean by consider your crop is for a close-up portrait, these work the best if you are about waist up. Anything that's farther out than just like waist right above the head is going to be a little too far out. It becomes a little bit awkward. So when you're creating that really classic portrait, just keep that in mind as you're framing and getting it set up in your camera. And this goes for if you're doing a landscape or horizontal or vertical. And so let me just scoot back. Here to here is about where you should be. Not too much space above the head, but also be very mindful that you're not chopping off part of the head, that you're not chopping off part of the shoulder, unless it's super intentional. If you are trying to get shoulders in the frame, head, and waist, they should all be there. You shouldn't be cropping out any of those as you're taking the picture. This is kind of like a second or like side point to considering your crop, but it is visually more appealing if you have your subject's eyes or like their head in that top rule of thirds. If you don't know what the rule of thirds is, your picture is always split up into thirds, so 1, 2, 3. So just compositionally, your subject should always be on one of those planes or lines of the rule of thirds. A lot of times with your close-up portraits, your subject's eyes will be on that top line in your thirds. Some cameras have this and you can turn it off, but if you've ever seen on your screen, there are there's 4 lines that split your screen up into 9 different sections. So your subject should be on one of those lines, technically, but for your close-up portraits, you should be kind of following those guidelines. One thing that is just not visually appealing, and I'm sorry if this is a hot take, but if you are taking a close-up portrait and you're taking it from here, and then there's like half of the photograph is just negative space above their head, in my opinion, it is not as visually as appealing as if your subject's head was in that top rule of thirds. And you don't need all that negative space above their head unless it's intentional and it's like very dramatic and just like a profile. I don't know. There's other ways that you could do that would actually be really pretty, but for a traditional classic portrait, Keep your subject's head in the top row of thirds with not too much negative space above their heads. So my second tip is to use some natural framing in your portrait, whether that be your subject is standing in like a flower bush or like a blooming tree in the spring or fall leaves or something. If you're doing this with some sort of like flower or leaf, use the branches as leading lines to your subject's face. And by this, what I mean is you could have the flowers kind of in front of them that kind of make a natural little frame around their face. Or if they're standing up against a wall, maybe the bricks are leading lines towards your subject's head. Whatever it may be, just kind of look at the details that are happening around your subject's head and their face, and what you could use as a natural just like line that brings the viewer's eyes towards your subject's face. You can also do this with your posing, and this could be either they're towards the side and you bring an arm around like so, and this creates that natural just like beautiful frame towards their face, draws the viewer's eyes to their eyes so they're looking at the subject. Or it could be like a hand here in the back. And this also goes into play with creating really flattering poses, and getting all those angles and showing off the waistline is also going to help as well. So there are many ways to do this to create just natural leading lines towards your subject, and just natural framing features that you can include. So just be mindful when you are, selecting a spot and thinking, oh, this will be really beautiful for a close-up. Some spots may be better for a far away, like full body shot. So it's just really important to pay attention to those details that are happening in the background. Number 3 is to have a very sharp focus. With a close-up image, it is going to be so much easier to notice if your focus isn't tack sharp on the subject's eyes. Sometimes it could be just slightly over, like towards their ear, and you'll be able to notice that with the close-up photos. As you're taking the picture, whether you have the little toggle with like the back button focus, or my R6, I have it set up to where I can drag my thumb on the screen. And so just be mindful when you are setting up that close-up portrait to be toggling or dragging your focus to their eyes and not their nose or something else around them. For myself, I actually shoot with a 1.8 aperture or f-stop, and this just creates a really beautiful, just like dreamy kind of background behind them, so nothing is too distracting in the background, which I think could be like another side tip to this tip, is to use a really wide open aperture so that all the focus is once again being placed on your subject's face. The higher that you get on your aperture number, being like a 4.0 or higher than that, you're gonna start being able to see more of the background in the image, and that's gonna be more distracting and cause people to look at the background instead of your subject's face. And with your close-up portraits, it's all about the subject. It's all about the eyes, the smile, the subject. So hopefully those 2 things made some sense to you and will be helpful at your next session when you are creating your close-up portraits. I think these are so beautiful and are a must-have in your seniors gallery, whether it be, for the moms. The seniors typically love them too, even just for like profile photos and whatnot. So on your list of photos to capture, be sure that you are including those close-up portraits, and considering your crop, using natural framing, and making sure that you have tack sharp focus on the eyes. If this video was helpful for you, please give it a little thumbs up, and comment if you have any questions or any video requests that you have. And yeah, I will see y'all next week with another video. Bye!